Yeah, there was another article written by someone else on that same study about what for very water. That's like, you know, I don't think it's a big thing for us. But it's gonna get the state of Colorado big time. That they're allowed. Well, yeah.
Hey, Sally, your screen is blurred. Perfect. Text Sally. I cannot hear any sound from the room.
I'm with you, Ken. We can't hear anything, so they'll hopefully all get figured out.
Same thing here. I can't hear anything. How about now? This one turns this way.
So you didn't hear any of that introductory?
No, but then that's because the owl was muted.
How's this?
Can you hear us, Ken?
From my end, guys, it's an echo chamber.
Can you hear it now? Going over there. So if you're over there, it comes out here, and here, it comes out.
Red light. Red lights are bad.
Yeah, that's correct. Now we just gotta shut off the one up there.
Okay, so we want, but you're, it's still echoing even though you're muted there. Because I unmuted this one. Right? How does this sound, Ken? Oh my gosh. That's not my.
I'm amazed.
How does this sound? Can you hear us? You can hear us, Ken?
Can you hear us, Ken?
I can't believe
No.
we both guys.
Okay.
No.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. You can hear
Good
us?
job.
All right, if you could move the window again one more time, just out of the way of the screen, I don't know, maybe lower the other side maybe, or, yeah, that's better. Takes me up just a bit. Okay, so Ken, Claire, and Doug online and in the room. Callie, Doug, Rebecca, Jeff Comstock, Steve, and Jeff Myers. Thanks for being with us.
Davis.
All righty, so our agenda is, oh, and lo and behold, Doug Davis.
B.
And Steve, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good to see you. All right, so I think you saw the agenda, even though you couldn't hear us talk. Let's keep moving here. We don't have a lot of time. So in the river negotiations, not a lot of publicly accessible information. We understand a lot going on behind the scenes. There are some sticking points. I made the comment that someone fairly high placed in the CWCB I spoke to recently said the divisions are pretty far apart. And I think that's to be expected. From our side, the UCRC, the upper division, is still awaiting the modeling by the reclamation of the lower division proposal that, oh, for crying out loud. Sorry. You hate it, don't you? After all that. Okay, all right, so I think the best that we can do is stand by. We'll know when we know, we'll know more when we know more. This isn't gonna go fast. But unfortunately, I think as we go through the rest of our discussion today, I think we're gonna reach a conclusion that it's gonna be a battle. That's my view. Okay, Sal. Questions or comments about the river, by the way, from online or here? Anybody know anything that contradicts what we just talked about?
You know, 2 days ago or yesterday, Jeff, I read something about, that Powell the problems they're having at Powell are fixable. But I wonder what that truly means. What's fixable?
Yeah. Okay,
And obviously the lower basin says, well, why do you need to fix it? We'll just take the dam out and we get
yeah,
40 million acre feet of
yeah.
free water.
So, Rebecca, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the problem that Steve's talking about, when they did go ahead,
I
Sal.
was just gonna say, Ken has his hand raised.
Okay, of course he does. He can. So, I think the problem that Steve is referencing, when they had the big flush and flow that was supposed to mobilize sediment, they
Yes.
damaged one of the lower, what do they call those things, the pipes?
Outlet pipes, I thought.
Yeah, it's,
They're the name.
you know, what's the name of that technically? I can't remember. Anyway, that thing got damaged. So it's below the surface, obviously, so repairing it won't be easy. There's, I don't know how much that plays into all of the operational context here. Ken, go ahead.
Just the one comment that I would make is that we may not hear a lot about where the negotiations are at until the Bureau of Rec brings back their alternatives and recommendation. And the main thing I'm curious about that I haven't really heard our state mention, but I can't imagine is not a major part of the strategy is, our legal options. I mean, it just seems that we would be preparing to go to court right from the beginning and, hopefully that never will happen. But at the same time, everything that we're doing is built around a sound legal strategy that's defensible in court. That's all.
Agreed. That's a good point. Okay. Last month, Rebecca gave at the roundtable an excellent hydrological overview. It was really informative and to the point. And that made me think that I haven't been doing a very good job. So Steve and I and Frank talked it over at the executive committee meeting a little bit. I made the proposal that we make a hydrology overview a regular feature of our Big River update. We'll probably talk about it most times to the Big River Committee, but maybe not. But at a minimum, we think it makes sense that every roundtable member should have that bi-monthly snapshot. What is the inflow to Lake Powell? What's being released? What's Powell's elevation and what's Mead's elevation? At least probably every person west of the Continental Divide should have that information, but at a minimum, we want our roundtable members to have that snapshot, okay? Now today, I haven't exactly settled on a really succinct format for that yet. Today, what we're gonna use is mostly from the 24-month study just released by the Bureau. I know Rebecca's already reviewed that. I wanted to talk to you earlier in the week, but I just couldn't get there, sorry. Anyway, so this will be a little more, and this is kind of more at the level that the river will probably look at the system. But at the roundtable level, we're only gonna spend about 5 minutes. Okay, all right, so Sal, go ahead. Do you want to go ahead and launch PowerPoint? Do you want to click on that guy right there? See my finger right here,
Sorry, under some button.
right there.
Okay.
There you go. That will enable the whole thing. Should have. All right, well, that's all right. It just makes these graphics a little bit easier to read, but that's okay. All right, so precipitation and snowpack. On the left of the screen is the water year precipitation through August. The water year, remember, is October through September. But you're looking at a pretty decent water year. The kind of medium green is 100% of normal. And you see a lot of that. You see blue, which is better than 100% in our basin. Up here, that's us. You see us, we're blue. Just north of the border, a little bit of blue, but mostly green. There's still some yellow areas for precipitation. And
Sorry.
there you go. And there's in the southern part of the basin, for sure, there's not just limited precipitation, but soil moisture isn't great. So the orange and red at the bottom there. And if you remember when we had the drought break in water year 2023, even though snowfall and precip were like 130+%, river flow was much less because a lot of that water went right into the soil. So we know we have to think about precip, but we also have to be cognizant of soil moisture. And that is something that I always think should be sort of front and center because return flow is a big part of that equation in all of the irrigated part of the system. Okay, Sal. So I think the next graphic is snow water equivalents. The black line shows where we are today. That's March, so January, March, May, and July. You're looking at something like 15 inches of snow water equivalent at the peak, which is, 2/3 of 25, which is 25 inches of snow water equivalent is kind of the maximum, but still, that's a reasonable year right there. So we're the snow water equivalents through the summer, we did well.
This one?
2 cell minutes here. Okay. Are we good?
Yeah.
Graphics, okay, there we go, that's a little better. Graphics legible. Okay, good. So this is a sort of CRISPA facility. There we go. This is a sort of a CRISPA facility update. You got Flaming Gorge, Blue Mesa, and Navajo. And you can see the percentages of full in those. There's a couple smaller reservoirs, Morrow Point and Findell. They're small, so I didn't blow them up. And then Lake Powell in the bottom corner there at about 40%. That's a little bit of rounding, but about 40% full. Okay, click once, Sal, would you? So inflows for water year 24 projected at 7.94 million acre feet. Remember that number. Through August, it's been about 7.85 million acre feet. The releases planned were in the mid-tier for the Bureau. So that was 7.48 million acre feet. That's also what's planned for next year. The actual release at the time that I could get the data was 7.04, but I don't think that means we're not gonna make about 7.5 million feet. Would you agree?
I get to make a prediction.
Yeah, I think we will.
I leave that to TK to do cancer.
Okay, all right. So something like the same behavior. About 7.9 and 7, something like that. The 10-year average flow at Lee Ferry, 8.6 million acre feet. Well, that's the 10-year average. Who wants to take a stab at the 30-year average flow at Lee Ferry? Anyone?
9.3.
9.6. 9.6 million acre feet is the 30-year average flow at Lee Ferry. So 9.6, 30, 8.6, 10, around 7.9 to 8 for the next few years. That's it. Maybe 2 years doesn't make a trend, but 30 years to 10 years makes a trend in my mind. Okay, what does that mean in terms of elevation? Hit it, Sal. This is a graphic from the 20-year, or from the 2-year study. Go ahead and hit it one more time. The Powell elevation on the 9th of September, 3580. So well above the 3525 critical infrastructure mark. That's about 6.6 feet better than this time last year, an increase. Now, if you look at the flow lines in the projection, the green one in the middle is the most probable inflow for the coming water year. The top one is maximum, the bottom one is minimum, the green one is most probable. If we do that, and we release 7.48 million acre feet to the lower basin, that should increase our elevation by something like 10 feet. So that's pretty good, up almost 7 feet this year. If we make it another 10 feet next year, that's pretty good. I think, I feel good about that. In contrast, this is the Meade elevation graph. Go ahead and hit it one more time, Sally. Meade was at 1,063.7 on the 10th of September. That's down about 2 feet from the last time. So we released 7.5 million acre feet, but Meade declined in elevation. You don't have to be a mathematical genius to understand that. It means they are using more than 7.5 million acre feet. And, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So you don't have a number on what they released here today?
What they have taken out year to date?
Yeah, what
You know, that number's probably available, but I don't know. I do not. Rebecca, do you know? Okay, so here's what's the worst news. The green line again is the most probable inflow to Meade. That's based on our release of 7.48 million acre feet. If that's what happens, Meade's elevation will decrease by about another 4 feet next year. That's the Bureau's forecast. Okay, so to Jeff, with this limited mental acuity, that says they are still using more than we are putting in. The good news is the Bureau is holding the line at the 7.48 number. That's good news for us. At Powell. The bad news is there's still a pattern of overuse below Powell. Okay, one more slide, I think, here, Sally, on this. Then we'll talk. Look back up. Okay, so my takeaways are these. The system is stable. We've gone up almost 7 feet. We're going to go up hopefully about 10 feet next year, maybe even a little better for the maximum inflow. I think there is a downward trend in available water. And that's something that we've talked about a lot over the last 3 years. We need to have other people talk that talk. Other people need to recognize the Colorado River Basin doesn't have the water that it used to have. Conservation measures downstream. I have got some slides that I got from Amy about what conservation, the lower basin is trying to do. They took about 1.17 million acre feet off their normal, their agreed to flows in 2023. Way less than that this year so far, about 400,000. The one interesting thing about the 2023 conservation, 450,000 acre feet of that was what defined as, it was from California, and it was defined as ICS water, intentionally created surplus. Remember we talked about that? It's a lot of acronyms. It's hard to remember this stuff, but basically, when you put water in, when you conserve water and define it as intentionally created surplus, it means you can get it back if you want. So a good third of what they've conserved so far, they intend to take back at some point. Maybe not quite a third, but all right. So those measures still are not adequate because mead continues to decline in elevation. Here's the last point. Whoop, back up, one more point, sorry. There's that, so that's the big picture. It's, I think, gives us a view, a snapshot of the basin, how it's working, what the CRISPR facilities look like. But there are the daily operational things. So I'm going to give you 2 examples now that are not going to encourage you. Sorry. You remember the drought response operations agreement, DROA, that we went into with Lower Division Bureau and us. And in 2022, we took about 750,000 acre feet, something like 740,000 acre feet out of Navajo and Blue Mesa, right? Dang near drained Blue Mesa. Didn't you see? If you ever seen any of those pictures, those people were hurt by that. That's all there is to it. That water was under the DROA, under the agreement, was shoved downriver for the purpose of propping up critical infrastructure. That's an exact quote. Meaning making sure that Powell didn't fall below critical infrastructure levels, except for the fact that over half that water was released. So more than 380,000 acre feet of the water for propping up critical infrastructure went downriver.
Justin's got his hand in.
Go ahead, Ken. You're still on mute. There you go.
I was hoping that in the future, we could better understand the timing and volume of when the evaporative loss is figured into these calculations.
That's a good question. Ben, you know, it's a good point, Ken, because some of that decline in mead's elevation could be exactly that, right? It could be evaporative loss.
Yeah, I'm in Phoenix now. They've had 61 days where the average daily temperature exceeded 110 degrees. So the evaporative loss down here is increasing.
And you're in Phoenix, why? If the temperature's over 110.
Well, I'm saving a lot of money on cooking. We can just set our pan out. No, actually, I just moved my mom back home.
So here's one more example. This is maybe worse. Earlier in the spring, during a balancing release, the Bureau made a mistake and they released 40,000 acre feet from Powell more. Did you hear the story? They released 40,000 acre feet more than was appropriate for that balancing release. It was just a mistake. Now listen, I am the last guy. Twice last week, I let the gate open, the sheep got out. I am the last guy to criticize somebody for making a mistake. But here's the thing. You would think that's not such a big deal because in the following month's release planning, they just withhold 40,000 acre feet, right? No. They claimed they did not have the authority to reduce the contracted amount, even though they acknowledged they exceeded the contract amount the month before. So the 40,000 acre feet went. Now, what that means to Jeff is at the systemic day-to-day operating level, factors are not in our favor. We have to continue to be diligent. The post-2026 operating guidelines are more critical than ever. We had a great hydrology year and a pretty good hydrology year. That's fine. We cannot take our eye off the ball. We just can't. Okay, we got 20 minutes left. Let's talk about the most interesting thing. We're gonna skip this next thing because, as I said, round 3 of SCPP, I don't know so much about it. You got the links from Rebecca and then later from me. I got them from Steve. Who within the sound of my voice had a chance to read the article of the study and the article? If you did, well, let's just take then we'll go quickly. Online, did anybody? What is AG? Well, there are enough people here that didn't. Doug, go ahead.
Yeah, I read it. Yeah, that's total garbage, man. So whatever. We send it down there to the river and they drain it out of Powell and send it to me. It don't matter. So, yeah.
Yeah, all right. Well, let's just go real quick, a quick review. So the study was called Closing Loopholes in Water Rights.
So Jeff, what does AGU stand for?
We do not know that.
Oh.
DNR doesn't know. I've asked 4 or 5 different people. No one really knows who these yokels are. They have some University of Virginia connection. We know that.
I think it's just a group, they call themselves that, but it's just a group of 20 to 30 supposedly scientists, hydrologists, and others.
Okay, it stands
There-
for Advancing Earth Space.
Say it again, Rebecca.
AGU, a group, yeah.
Say it again.
That's the logo behind AGU. That's not what AGU stands for.
Yeah, that's what the advancing, well, after UG, don't be confused. Strange acronym. But yeah, advancing, that's what the logo says.
Okay, so
Okay.
this is basically read out of the summary from their study. They quantify excess water diversions due to Free River Conditions Law in Division 5. Now, everybody knows this, but Division 5 is the main stem. So it's Granby to Grand Junction. It's got some pretty big tributaries. By far, I think that's correct, by far the most consumptive use out of the Colorado River for any other division. So it's big division. That's why they said they wanted to study it. So under Free River conditions, anyone can use any amount of water as long as they put it to beneficial use, right? That's the limitation. They call those excess diversions a loophole. They also refer to them as improperly defined water rights in Colorado law. And they claim that stemming those excess diversions would save in a year about 87,000 acre feet and help to bank water that would stave off future droughts. These 3 points are right in the summary. That's the first thing. Okay, now there are some problems. Go ahead, Sal. There are some problems. First of all, free river conditions were established in the Colorado Constitution. So they're sort of making a claim in the study that it's simply a matter of going to court and changing the law. It isn't, right? It's a part of the Colorado Constitution, but it's not really a loophole. It's not a mistake, right? We intend in Colorado to administer water in this way. This is an aspect of our intent. It's not like, oh, we forgot. Of course. Free river conditions are kind of how we do it. Okay, according to the people that I know in DNR, that free water condition use that is grossly overestimated in the study. So first of all, the water commissioner records aren't real time, right? So they just kind of extrapolate, they say, okay, in May, this diversion had a record that said it was entitled to 2 cubic feet per second, it's free water, so they took 3. As long as free river conditions persisted, they must have been using 3. Of course, that's not accurate. We know that even as free river conditions persist, that usage changes, and we don't have the kind of records to support calculating that, and they don't either. So the last thing, or the second to the last thing that's big to me is there's no concept of beneficial use. I'm pretty sure, I read the thing twice. I'm pretty sure the phrase beneficial use isn't in there. So they're characterizing this water as wasted, this water that could be saved. We're not wasting it, we're using it. And if you don't use it beneficially, you're not legally using it anyway. So even if you take 3 CFS instead of 2, you better be putting that water to beneficial use. On top of all of the other things that flood irrigation and irrigation water in general, diversions benefit the system for, like return flow, right? So the last thing, this is Jeff's point. I didn't, none of my friends made this for me, I made it myself. An acre foot of water is 326,500 gallons. You guys probably know. A gallon is a piss poor way of thinking about water in the Colorado Basin. And so they're talking about 87,000 acre feet, which let's pretend it was right. Right? The lower basin is overusing 2.5 to 3 million acre feet a year. So the call it 90,000 acre feet, what that's like 27 to 42 times, what's the other way around? The overuse in the lower basin is 27 to 42 times that. So it just is a pretty small thing to make such a big deal about. And that leads us to the Newsweek article. So go ahead.
So before you get off that slide, Jeff, the data that they got for Division 5 was, they say, we thank especially Caleb Foy from the Division 5 support system. So I assume Caleb Foy some way, shape, or form works within DNR or DWR Division 5.
Yeah, Caleb Boyd, the assistant division engineer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that's who assisted them with pulling their data, right or wrong. And I'm just saying, they've got an inside look, right, at
I
something.
mean, yeah, you're right, Steve. They may have the correct number, obviously it's impossible to know for sure, but I think, to your point, Jeff, I was curious because the article in Newsweek did not say, well, how much is that compared to Lake Powell? 87,000 acre feet is 0.35% of total Lake Powell storage. So, they're kind of using it in the Newsweek article as a way to prop up Powell. I mean, Powell, the Bureau estimates Lake Powell has 500,000 acre feet of evaporation every year. And as Jeff said, they had a $40,000 or 40,000 acre feet, oopsies. So 87,000 acre feet is kind of, that's not even worth your time. It's right, in my opinion, right?
That's exactly
the
what
University of Virginia not understanding all the scale of this river.
That's exactly right. And it gets worse when you look at the actual Newsweek article. Go ahead, Sal. So the Newsweek article is basically more of the same. These are statements right now. They're closing a loophole could save billions of gallons. They quote experts from Virginia and Arizona. The Arizona guy probably doesn't have an axe to grind. I'll bet. He calls it a historic anomaly. And then the Newsweek article says implications could be significant, but they don't quantify that, right? So back to Rebecca's point, the scale. 326,500 gallons per acre foot, 1 billion gallons just isn't that much water. It really isn't. But the average guy walking down the street thinks, wow, those people from Colorado are wasting half of Lake Powell here or something, right? So the message in the article is really the problem, and the accuracy of the computations we can dispute or not dispute. So here's the thing. I don't know how much the state, what's your, I'm talking a little bit. What is your opinion of how much effort we should put into refuting this thing? Who has thoughts on it?
Well,
Go ahead.
it's a drop in the bucket. But what it's gonna do, it's diversion. When we're saying that their 2 million acre feet are going down to California and the lower basin. That shouldn't be, well, and they're gonna point right back. So it's the politics of water, it's a diversion. And when somebody presses the point on the lower basin, they've got the point to press back that says, hey, Colorado, you guys are using water that should be in Powell, and we should be able to use that water. That's what the whole thing's about. So it's, to me, it's just gonna give a black eye to Colorado. That we even have this law, because if you read this, it not only says that if you have a water right, you can overuse water while it's in the river. If you don't have a water right, you can pull water out of the river if you're gonna use it for beneficial use. That's what the article
Right,
says.
yeah, it's a free review.
Yes.
All right, can't hold that thought. Rebecca, go ahead.
Oh, was I next? Sure, yeah, you're right. I think it does give Colorado a black eye. CWCB did thankfully, they were asked to contribute to the article and push back. I think in a really good quote saying this is not how our system works, and you obviously didn't understand it, almost saying it in a nicer way than that to the article writer. I talked to our external affairs team about this and just kind of, how worried should we be was kind of a question to them. And they kind of said, we see articles like this. Everyone in the entire country right now is so interested in Colorado River that it's just clickbait. They come up with these articles saying, oh, you're gonna save billions of gallons to get people to click on it. And no one's actually, people who are working on these issues are not actually looking at these crazy suggestions. That, this is something that journalists like to pick up and people in Virginia are looking at, but no one in Colorado who works on the river is saying we need to shut this down. As Jeff mentioned, in our constitution, changing that to say that you can't take water when the river is not under appropriation is a really big deal to change and is really likely to have any kind of momentum in the state. So I think the positive is it's probably not going to change. I think you're right in the negative context. It does give Colorado, I think, some people with the lower basin to point at. However, I think the other piece of that is we don't use 7.5 million acre feet a year in the upper basin. So don't tell us to shut off 87,000 acre feet because we're not even close to our full appropriations. So I think that's how I would push back on first.
So Ken, go ahead.
Well, I would hope that Amy and Becky and Jason Ullman and Phil Weiser have contacted Newsweek and AGU and helped them to better understand this issue and help them write a retraction or a better explanation of what they were trying to say. And the other thing I wanted to say is that this is, I think to Rebecca's point, this is just the beginning. We're going to see this go on. This is just going to be not much different from a political campaign. And we need to try to make sure we need to stay right on top of this type of back and forth that's going to go on between different groups, trying to make the lower basin or the upper basin look better than they should. and to try to make sure there's a standard of fact finding that is everybody agrees to adhere to. That's all.
So your vote then, Ken, just to summarize is, you think that we should put effort into refuting? We should try to get Newsweek to publish.
Absolutely.
At least an opposing article.
Yeah, and if you have the Division of Water Resources, the state engineer and the state attorney general, along with our negotiators, contact them and explain, because likely, in fairness, this is pretty complicated. And you get a sensational thing like, oh, billions of gallons of water. It is just very misleading and it doesn't help the situation. But you need somebody of authority from the state contacting them and making sure they understand.
Okay, interesting. All right, Doug, what's your view?
So I'll agree with Ken, what Ken just said. So I think we divert it, doesn't mean we used it. We get measured on consumptive use. And that is not overuse. So we need to make sure that, yeah, you can divert more water, but it just ends up running back into the stream as return flows. So I just think that, yeah, I don't know how they're gonna do that, but somebody at the CWCB and yeah, they need to come up with a refuting on this. Thank you.
Okay, at a larger level. Kelly, did you want to add to
Just
that?
a real quick, again, we haven't got the study done, but the fact that water does get to Lake Powell later in the year because of your return slopes. Not the runoff, off the top.
Yeah, that whole idea that it's
Return flow.
wasted.
Yeah.
But the question I don't think is whether we can agree that the thing is way off base.
But I do think we need to refute it.
Yeah, the question is
Accurate information.
how much effort should we, and beyond that, what should we do to not be in the defensive position here? What things does the Upper Colorado River Commission, the Upper Division, how do we get ahead of this kind of thing? Anybody have thoughts on that or ideas?
Well, it's not an upper division issue, it's a Colorado issue, because the other 3 states in the upper divisions don't have the same law.
This specific thing, that's true, Steve. But in the general information war, which Jeff would argue the lower division is winning.
Yeah.
What should we be doing about that?
The state of Colorado just needs to be putting out accurate information and they need to get it out far and wide.
I
They need to
agree.
do a campaign with accurate information.
Go ahead, Bob.
Offense instead of defense. Well, I mean, the whole concept of everybody sitting around and coming to some consensus on this is nuts to me. This is a battle. And if you wanna just roll over and lose, then play defense. That's how I look at it.
I think you're exactly right, and I'll just use, Ken, before you hold that thought, I'll just use the wolf experience. The wolf thing is a cluster, obviously. I don't know if you have to relocate a wolf pack that you've located, how much more of a defeat you have to admit than that. But if you remember back to the election time, Colorado Cattlemen's Association, we made that thing close. And if it wouldn't have been a controversial presidential election, or we would have had maybe one more month, we probably would have won that thing. Remember, we lost by 0.7%. Terry Fankhauser, the executive director of Colorado Cattlemen's, hired this group of people. I don't want to say PR. I think they were basically political operatives. But they knew how to poll. They knew how to build focus groups that were accurate. They knew how to tune the message so that the soccer mom and the office worker dad could understand it. Whatever I just a long way of saying what Doug said. There are people who know how to do this, right? And we gotta get some of them on our side. We gotta.
But here's in that exact same situation with the wolves, had Colorado CPW been able to speak accurate facts, we would have defeated it also.
That's true,
And they didn't do it because of our governor.
because of our.
And now if our Division of Water Resources and Colorado Water Conservation Board would promote facts, it would help us in this scenario.
Yeah, Kelly, there's no doubt, there's no
They've
doubt.
got to get-
And I don't wanna sound like the guy who is skeptical about the truth.
Yeah, no,
But in this case, I'm just saying, it's about the message, right? And there are people who know how to do that. There's a science to it. There are people who know how to go on defense. And we gotta get them. Rebecca?
So I guess what I'm hearing is that, you know, maybe that's something that we can take to Becky Mitchell and to Amy Dyke and the others at CWCB, is that, you know, from our roundtable, we're really interested in seeing Colorado push back at more of these narratives, and also take more of the offensive and come out ahead of these narratives, and maybe just have more of that public PR perspective in the news instead of just defending that. Maybe that's something.
I think that's exactly right. Ken, go ahead. Last comment on this part. Go ahead.
Thank you. I think that there should be two concurrent and probably equal efforts. One with the actual negotiations with the lower division states. But just as important is this battle for the public information, and make sure that we are getting a chance to tell our own story proactively and not be responding to articles like this.
With you, 100%. All right, Sally, can you advance us one more time? Okay. So does anybody want to put thumbs down on the bi-monthly hydrology update?
I like it.
I think we should see. Okay. The bucket 2E, we didn't talk about very much, but we've been talking a lot about this last topic about a role in the policy information war. So Rebecca, just recap what you said one more time.
Yeah, I think Becky's always looking for feedback, and so I think that's something that we can take to her as a roundtable, that we're interested in. We'd like to see Colorado pushing back more and having more of a PR initiative on a nationwide scale, for explaining the river, I guess, and our side of the story.
Okay, and we gotta think about how we do that. How do we, but Commissioner Mitchell, you're right, she asked us, what, give me some feedback. Maybe the Big River Committee needs to think about maybe a letter or a letter of support of some kind that would do just that.
Is Commissioner Mitchell going to be at the C9 summit?
Yes,
That might be a good opportunity.
might be a great place to talk more about it. We never list that. We never list that as one of the topics in the low and no regrets strategy, but that would actually make a lot of sense, wouldn't it? I would think every roundtable could contribute a story or two that would lend itself to a positive message. That I think we could do that. That's an excellent idea. Okay, I think, go ahead.
One last question. So what role do we think the Colorado River District can play in this messaging?
That's a good question.
I mean, yeah, you're the ones that have that real knowledge there.
And I would say that, you know, we have an external affairs
Right.
staff with 3 people, and we are very interested in having a good PR message. So yeah, I certainly think that, you know, capacity is always kind of the thing, because we're not only, you know, pushing back against the big story, but sometimes pushing back against other places in Colorado. Yeah. Just kidding. Let's try to be diplomatic.
I know you're right about it.
But I think that's something, you know, that I can take back to the River District too, and say, you know, the roundtables are really, or our roundtable is really looking for some of that pushback, and to have maybe a louder voice in some of those directions.
And ideally, it would be the River District and the state working together with their teams to pursue.
Yes, we would love that.
Very good. Very good. All right. It's Peppo time, I think, isn't it? Ken, go ahead. Did you have another last point to make about this topic?
Yes, one last thing. I'd remind us that we're only 2 months from suddenly there being a myriad of options on very qualified public research and lobbying efforts. They have been working on political campaigns here the last 6 months to a year. They're about to be unemployed, and these are experts on how to message and tell the story for Colorado. I'd be trying to hire at least one or two of those different companies that do this work politically and put them to work on the message that we need for Colorado and for the Upper Basin states. That's all.
Good, that's a good idea. All righty. We're gonna call it. Thank you for being here. Thanks for your efforts. I think our next conversation is about that. But we do have the C9. Before we meet again, the C9 summit will be happening. So we'll have a chance maybe to even put some more flesh on those bones before we meet again. And
When is the summit? When is the
the
C9?
C9 summit's the 1st and 2nd of October. It's impressive view. And I don't know how Ken knows more. I don't know how our representation is going there. I'm gonna be there. Callie? Does anyone else have a plan to be in Crested View? Besides Rebecca and Callie?
Steve should have the list.
Just one last little, Ken, go ahead. Were you gonna say something about that?
Well, just that Steve has the list of who's going to the C9.
Okay,
I think we're up to 6 or 7.
good, good deal.
We're up to six members that would be on the reimbursables. Rebecca's probably not on that list because she's getting. You're on a different. Yeah, I know. You're on your own list.
I think that's true. By the way, before Ken launches here in the Beppo thing, I'll just tell you that in my youth, Crested View did not have the glam cachet that it has today. Some of the engineers I worked with called it crusted, but that was the name it went by back in the day. So now it's pretty high toil.
It's still, in Gunnison, it was still called that.
Yeah.
All right.
Cold place.
I am gonna excuse myself. Get so much done.
So the one, this is the report. This, so instead of Newsweek. Done. That's what's in. This is water. That's what it is.
Ken, do you want to start things or do you want me to?
So it's not
I-
just.
I'd like you to take over and I'll just, I'll fill in if I need to.
Okay, sounds great. Bye. See you.
Yeah, I had a chance to look at it.